6 Soldiers of Fortune by the Brothers Grimm. There was once a man who was a jack of all trades. He had served in the war, and he had been brave and bold. But at the end of the war he was sent about his business, with 3 shillings and his discharge. "I'm not going to stand this. Wait till I find the right man to help me," said he, "and then the king shall pay me my due, all the treasures of his kingdom, before he's done with me, I say." Then, full of anger, he went into the forest, and he saw a man standing there by 6 trees, which the man had pulled up as if they had been but blades of grass. So our man said to him, "Will you be my man? Come along with me." "All right," he answered. "I must just take this bit of wood home to my father and mother first." And so taking one of the trees, he bound it around the other 5, and putting the bundle on his back as if it was a feather, carried it off. And he soon returned, and went along with his new leader, who said to him, "2 such as us can stand against the whole world, I say." And when they had gone on just a little, they came to a huntsman, who was kneeling on one knee and taking careful aim with his rifle. "Hey, huntsman," said the leader, "what are you aiming at?" "Well, 2 miles from here, there sits a fly on the brim of an oak tree. I'm going to put this bullet right through its left eye." "Oh, come along with us," said the leader. 3 of us can stand together against the whole world." The huntsman was quite willing to go with him, and so the 3 went on until they came to 7 windmills, whose sails were going briskly around, yet there was no wind blowing from anywhere, and not a leaf on the trees stirred. "Well," said the leader, "I can't think of what ails the windmills, turning without the wind. What in the world?" And he went on with his followers about 2 more miles, and then they came to a man sitting alone in a tree, holding one of his nostrils and blowing with the other. "What now?" said the leader. "What you doing up there, mate?" 2 miles from here," answered the man, "there are 7 windmills. I blow and they turn round." "Oh, go with us," cried the leader. 4 of us together can stand against the whole world." So the blower got down and went with them, and after a time they came to a man standing on one leg. The other had been taken off and was lying near him. "You seem to have a handy way of resting yourself," said the leader to the man. "I am a runner," answered he, "and in order to keep myself from going too fast, I have to take off my leg, for when I run with both, I run faster than any bird can fly." "Well," cried the leader, 5 of us together may well stand against the world. Come on with us." So the runner went with them all together, and it was not long before they met a man with a little hat on, and he wore it pulled over just one ear. "Manners, manners," said the leader. "With your hat like that, you look like a jack fool, I say." "Oh, I dare not put it straight," answered the other. "If I did, there would be such a terrible frost that the very birds would be frozen and fall dead from the sky to the ground." "Well, come with me," said the leader. "We 6 together may well stand against the whole world, I say." So the 6 went on until they came to a town where the king had caused it to be made known that whoever would run a race with his daughter and win, it might then become her husband, but that whoever lost must also lose his head in the bargain. So the leader came forward and said that one of his men should run for him. "Well, all right," said the king, "but his life too must be put up in pledge, and if he fails, both you and him shall lose your heads." When the deal was quite settled and agreed upon, the leader called the runner and strapped on his second leg to him. "Now look out, and take care that we win so we don't lose our heads." It had been agreed that the one who should first bring water first from a far distant brook and stream should be named the winner of the race. Now, the king's daughter and the runner each took a pitcher, and they both started at the same time. Pew! But in a moment, in a flash, when the king's daughter had only taken but a few steps, the runner was far out of sight, for his running was as fast as if the wind rushed by. In a short time our man reached the brook. He filled his pitcher full of water and turned back again. About halfway home, however, he was overcome with sleepiness, and set down his pitcher and lay down on the ground to sleep. But in order to awaken soon again, by not lying too soft, he took a horse's skull which lay nearby, and placed it under his head for his pillow. In the meanwhile, the king's daughter, who really was a good runner, good enough to beat any ordinary man, of course, had reached the brook, filled her pitcher, and was hastening back when she saw the runner lying asleep. "The day is mine," she said with much joy, and she emptied his pitcher on the ground and continued on as fast as she might. Now all had been lost, except for the huntsman, who was standing on the castle wall, saw with his keen eyes all that had happened. "We must not be outdone by the king's daughter," he said, and he loaded his rifle and took such an aim that he shot the horse's skull right out from under the runner's head, without doing the runner himself any harm. And so the runner awoke and jumped up, and saw his pitcher standing empty, and the king's daughter a far way off on her way home. But he didn't lose courage. He ran again swiftly to the brook, filled it with more water, and for all that, he still got home 10 minutes before the king's daughter. "Look you, this is the first time I've really stretched my legs in a long time. Before, it was not worth the name of running." The king was vexed, and his daughter yet even more so, that she could be beaten by such a discharged common soldier. And so she and the king took counsel together on how they might rid themselves of the soldier and his companions at the same time. I have a plan, dear daughter. Do not fear, but that we shall be quit of them forever." Then the king went out to the men, and bade them to feast and be merry, and to eat and drink their fill. And then he led them to a room which had a floor of iron, and the doors were iron, and the windows had iron frames and bolts. In the room was a table set out with costly food. "Now go in there and make yourselves comfortable," said the king. And when they had gone in, he had the door locked and bolted. Then he called a cook and told him to make a big fire underneath the room, so that the iron floor of it should be red hot. And the cook did so, and the six men began to feel the room grow very hot, by reason, as they first thought, because of the good dinner. But as the heat continued to grow greater and greater, they soon found that the doors and windows had been locked, and they began to think that it must be the evil plan of the king to suffocate them. He shall not succeed, however, said the man with the little hat. I will bring on a frost that shall make the fire feel ashamed of itself, and shall leave us in this room. So the man set his hat on straight, and immediately there came such a frost in the room that all the heat passed away, and the food froze in the dishes. After an hour or two had passed, and the king thought they must all have died from the heat, he caused the door to be open, and went in himself to see how they fared. But when the door flew back, there were all 6 of the men quite safe and sound, and they said they were quite ready to come out, so that they might warm themselves, for the great cold of the room had caused the food to freeze even in the dishes. Now, full of anger, the king went to the cook and scolded him, and asked why he had not done as was ordered. "It is hot in there, your highness. Go see for yourself," answered the cook. And the king looked and saw an immense fire burning underneath the room of iron, and he began to think that the 6 men could not be gotten rid of in that way. So he set about a new plan, which it might be managed. So he thought and sent for the leader and said to him, "If you will give up your right to my daughter and take gold instead, you can have as much as you like." "Certainly, my lord king," answered the man. "Let me have as much gold as my servant can carry, and I'll give up all claim to your daughter." The king agreed, and that he should come again. The king agreed, and asked the man to come back in a fortnight to fetch the gold. Our soldier called together all of the tailors he could find in the kingdom, and set them to work to make a sack, and he took it back with him to the king. And when it was ready, the strong man, who had been found rooting up trees by their roots, took it on his shoulder and went to the king. Who is this immense fellow, carrying on his shoulder a bundle such as big as may be a house?" cried the king, terrified to think of how much gold he would carry off. Yet he had a ton of gold dragged in by 16 men, and laid it all out on the floor, and said, "Here you go, mate. Take what you can." The big soldier replied, "Why don't you bring some more? This will hardly cover the bottom of my sack." So the king bade the men to fetch more and more gold, by degrees the whole of his treasure. Yet even after that, the sack was not half full. "Bring more," cried the strong man. "These few scraps go no way at all." So at last the king had 7,000 wagons laden with gold collected throughout the whole of his kingdom, and he threw them all in the man's sack. "I won't look too closely," said the strong man, "but I'll take what this is, so long as the sack is mostly full." And when all of the gold was put in, there was still more room. "Oh, well, "I must make an end of this," he said. "If it is not full, it is a lot easier to tie up." Oh! He hoisted it onto his back and set off with his 5 comrades. When the king saw all the wealth of his realm carried off by a single man, he was full of anger, and he bade his soldiers and cavalry to mount and follow after the 6 men, to chase them down and to take the sack away from the strong man. 2 regiments were soon up to them. 2 regiments were soon called up to them, and called them to consider themselves prisoners, and to give back the sack, or to be cut into pieces. "Prisoners, say you?" said the man who could blow the wind. "Suppose first you have a little dance together in the air." And the man who could blow held one nostril, and blowing with the other, he sent the whole regiment flying head over heels, way far over the hills. But a sergeant who had 9 wounds, and was a brave fellow, begged not to be blown away to so much shame. So the blower let him down easily, so that he came to no harm. And he bade that man to go back to the king and tell him that whatever regiments he liked to send more would all be blown away just the same. And so, when the king heard the message, he said, "Oh, let those fellows be. They have some magic on their side." So the 6 men carried home their treasure, divided it amongst themselves, and lived happy forevermore until the day they died. Thank you for listening to this bedtime audio book. Visit us online at bedtimeaudiobooks.com.